He lost his wife, but found love again in an angel, the billionaire's garden of healing. The villa stood silent, as if mourning her too. Adrian Blackwood sat in the center of the grand piano room, the echo of his late wife's laughter still clinging to the edges of the high ceilings like a ghost refusing to leave. It had been 10 months since the accident, 10 months since the world had stopped making sense. He had everything: a billion-dollar tech empire, a penthouse in Manhattan, and a reputation for brilliance and brutal efficiency. But without Sophia, none of it meant a damn thing. His staff tiptoed around him, conversations lowered, music muted. Even the clock seemed to tick more quietly now. The only sound he welcomed was the wind brushing against the trees because it didn't ask him to move on. He wasn't ready. He wasn't sure he ever would be. On the outskirts of Cartagena, in a quiet corner of a small church garden, Isabella Martinez adjusted her gloves and dug her fingers into the soil. Gardening was her peace, her prayer when words failed. A 28-year-old foster care survivor, she had a quiet heart and a gift, though she'd never call it that. People said she had a calming presence. Others whispered that she could see people's pain, even when they hid it. Isabella didn't believe in magic, but she did believe in purpose, that somehow helping others heal might one day help her heal too. She worked at Villa Serena, a retreat center where the wealthy and wounded sometimes came to forget, remember, or cry without judgment. She didn't expect anything to change until Adrian Blackwood showed up. He arrived on a gray Tuesday, dressed in black with no entourage, just grief worn like a second skin. The retreat had received a private request. One guest, indefinite stay, no press, no photos, no questions. Isabella didn't even know his name at first, only that the new guest took the farthest cabin, tipped no one, and spent hours walking the trails alone. She noticed him the first time he paused by the rose beds. He didn't look at her, just stared at the flowers, as if they were speaking in a language he couldn't quite remember. She didn't speak either, just kept planting until he finally asked, "Why do you bother with them? They'll be dead by October." She looked up. "Because they're alive today." Their eyes met, and something in his chest shifted, almost painfully. The next day he came back, said nothing, and watched her trim lavender sprigs in silence. And the next day, after that. Then a week passed, and he didn't return. Isabella found herself wondering why that unsettled her. Adrian had told himself he'd never feel anything again, but there was something about the way she moved, calm, deliberate, the way her hands never hesitated, even when her voice was soft. He found himself remembering her answer about the roses, because they're alive today. It echoed when he least expected it, in his dreams, in the shower, in the way he began noticing small things again, the breeze, the scent of rain, the rhythm of the earth that didn't stop for grief. So, on the 10th day, he returned. Isabella looked up but didn't comment on his absence. Instead, she handed him a pair of gloves. "No thorns today," she said. He hesitated, then took them. That afternoon they planted together, in silence, and when the sun began to set, Adrian said quietly, "My wife loved dahlias." Isabella didn't look up, she just smiled. "Then we'll plant those next." He didn't know it yet, but in that garden, under the soft sunlight and with dirty hands, something was growing, something fragile, something sacred. Not a replacement, not a cure, but perhaps a beginning. Adrian laughed. It surprised them both. "Don't get used to that," he warned. Isabella grinned. Too late. By the end of the week, the staff noticed the change. Adrian ate dinner at the main lodge instead of taking it in his room. He nodded at people now, even said, "Thank you." He didn't smile often, but when he looked at Isabella, something behind his eyes lit up, even if only for a moment. One afternoon, Isabella found a note in her gardening basket. No name, just handwriting. she now knew by instinct. "Let me help you build the arbor." It wasn't romantic, not overtly, but it meant something. Adrian Blackwood didn't offer help until now. The arbor was her idea, a wooden arch to mark the garden's entrance, a place for memory, for peace. They worked on it for days, sawing, sanding, staining. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. By the time they stood beneath it, with the sun streaking through the beams, she turned to him and asked, "Do you ever miss who you used to be?" He thought for a moment, then said, "I don't know who that was anymore." She nodded, understanding. "I don't think grief changes us," she said. "I think it reveals us." He looked at her, really looked, and asked, "And what has it revealed in you?" Isabella took a long breath. "That I'm still standing." Adrian reached out and brushed a smudge of dirt from her cheek, said nothing, but everything was in his eyes. That night, Adrian dreamed of Sophia, not in a nightmare, not in pain, just her smile and her voice whispering, "It's okay." He woke up with tears on his face, and for the first time, they didn't hurt, they healed. The next morning, Isabella wasn't in the garden, nor the next. Adrian asked the staff, and they told him she'd taken a few days off to visit her foster sister outside the city. He felt something cold settle in his chest. Not panic, not longing, but he missed her presence, her steadiness, the way she made silence feel safe, not hollow. So he did something he hadn't done in years. He wrote a letter. "Isabella, you once told me grief reveals that we grow through what we lose. I don't know what I'm becoming yet, but I know your voice is the first thing I hear when I'm not trying to disappear. Come back soon. I don't like the garden without you. Adrian." He folded the note, tucked it into her basket, and waited. 2 days later, she returned, found the letter, and read it slowly. When she walked into the garden and saw him again, waiting by the dahlias, she smiled. "I missed this place," she said. "I missed you," he replied. And just like that, something bloomed between them that had nothing to do with flowers, something terrifying and beautiful, something neither of them had words for yet, but both were beginning to feel. The change was subtle at first, a longer glance, a shorter distance between them on the garden bench, a shared smile that lingered too long. Adrian tried to ignore it, tried to pretend he didn't notice how Isabella's laughter made the world sound less hollow, how he looked forward to her every word, even the simple ones. "Pass the trowel. You missed a spot. Look at that bloom." But denying it only made it louder. Something was shifting inside him, something he'd buried the moment Sophia took her last breath. Hope. And it terrified him. Isabella noticed the change, too, in herself. She'd been careful with her heart for so long, careful not to get attached, not to expect too much, not to believe a man like Adrian, powerful, grieving, distant, would ever see someone like her as anything more than a temporary light in a dark place. But he was looking at her differently now, and she didn't know what to do with it. One afternoon, the air grew heavy with summer heat. Storm clouds darkened the sky above the retreat. Isabella sat in the greenhouse, repotting baby succulents. Adrian stood nearby, silent, watching the rain begin to dot the glass roof. "This place makes the storm feel softer," he said, almost surprised. Isabella looked up. "Why are you really here, Adrian?" He turned to her slowly. "I told you. The grief," she shook her head. "That's what brought you. But why are you still here?" He didn't answer immediately. Then he said, his voice low, "Because this is the only place I've been where I don't feel like I'm dying." The words hit hard in her chest, in her spine, in places she didn't know could ache for someone else. She put down the pot. "Have you ever thought maybe you're not here to forget her?" she asked. "Maybe you're here to remember yourself." Adrian closed his eyes because he knew she was right. That evening, the power flickered out from the storm. The staff lit candles, and the kitchen served soup and bread by lantern light. Adrian sat beside Isabella at the long wooden table. The mood was warm, intimate. She told a story about a foster family who kept 30 goats in their backyard, and everyone laughed, the sound filling the room like music. As the night wore on, the storm outside raged, but inside there was a different kind of storm brewing, one of emotions, of connections, of a future that neither Adrian nor Isabella could have imagined just a few months ago. And in that moment, they both knew that something had irrevocably changed. He laughed, really laughed, and everyone turned, not because of the noise, but because of the joy. It was rare, it was raw, it was real, and it belonged to Isabella. Later that night, they walked the trail behind the garden where the earth smelled like rain and moss. Adrian stopped near the arbor they'd built together. He turned to her, hesitant. "I want to show you something." She nodded. He led her to his cabin. Inside, it was quiet, minimal, but on one wall hung a single painting, vibrant, soft, unfinished. A garden under stormlight, dahlias at the center, and a woman in the distance, barely visible, but unmistakably her. Isabella stepped forward, hand over her heart. "You painted this." He nodded. "I haven't painted in 10 years, not since before Sophia." She looked at the canvas, then at him, and whispered, "It's beautiful." "I'm not done," he said, "with the painting, with all of this, with healing, with her." Isabella turned toward him, her heart in her throat. "You don't have to be done to begin again." He took a step closer, close enough to feel the warmth between them. "I don't know what this is," he said, "but when I'm with you, I feel like maybe I can breathe again." Isabella reached up and touched his chest, right over his heart. "Then breathe," she whispered. And he did, and he kissed her. It was soft, uncertain, but full of something neither of them had felt in so long. Life. Afterward, they sat in the dark, her hand in his, listening to the rain. He spoke first. "I feel like I'm betraying her." Isabella didn't move away. "You're not," she said gently. "You're honoring her by still being here, by letting your heart find light again." He looked at her. "I'm scared. So am I." They stayed like that for a long time. No plans, no promises, just present. And sometimes that's how love begins, not with a declaration, but with permission. The next day, Isabella didn't show up to the garden, or the next. Adrian waited, his stomach tightening. Then came the call. An accident. A car had hit her sister's truck outside Albany. Isabella had been in the passenger seat. Not life-threatening, but she was injured. A concussion, a fractured wrist, deep bruising. She would need time, rest, space. Adrian drove upstate without telling anyone. He arrived at the hospital and saw her, pale, bandaged, but alive. She blinked when she saw him. "You came." "I needed to," he said. She tried to smile. "You're supposed to be healing, not babysitting me." He sat beside her bed and took her hand. "I'm doing both." And in the quiet hum of hospital machines, she leaned her head against his shoulder and whispered, "I didn't think you'd come." He kissed her forehead. "I told you, I'm not done." But outside the hospital, someone watched, a man in a long coat, camera in hand. And in the morning, Adrian's past would come crashing back, because some people don't let love rise without trying to destroy it. The headlines hit the internet like a match to dry leaves. Billionaire widower Adrian Blackwood caught in hospital tryst with mystery woman. Grieving or moving on too soon. Meet the new flame of a broken man. From loss to lust, Blackwood's emotional spiral. Photos, zoomed-in shots, a grainy image of Adrian holding Isabella's hand by her hospital bed, another of her resting against his shoulder, pale and bandaged. There were no names in the articles, but the tone was venomous, cruel, unforgiving. Adrian stood in the library of his penthouse in Manhattan, phone in one hand, jaw clenched so tightly it ached. He hadn't returned for meetings, but after Isabella was discharged and insisted on staying with her sister for a few more days, he came back just to think. And now, the past he tried so hard to leave behind had caught up in the ugliest way. His publicist was calling, so were board members, so were people who hadn't cared one bit about him in months, until his private grief became clickbait. He turned his phone off and threw it into the fireplace. Isabella didn't see the article until the next morning. Her sister Lily hovered over her with worry. "I didn't want you to see it like this, but—" Isabella read every word, every assumption, every lie dressed in cruel speculation, and her heart broke, not just for herself, but for Adrian. Because she knew this wasn't just gossip for him, it was betrayal. The man who had spent almost a year hiding from the world now had it thrown in his face again because of her. And even if he didn't blame her, she blamed herself. Adrian returned to the retreat that night. He walked into the garden just before midnight, the moon casting silver across the rows of blooms they'd planted together. The arbor stood solemn and proud. The dahlias were in full bloom, but she wasn't there. And for the first time since meeting her, the silence didn't comfort him. It crushed him. The next day, Isabella came back. She was still healing, bruised, quiet, with a protective brace around her wrist. She found him in the greenhouse, sleeves rolled up, repotting mint, with the gentleness of someone desperately trying to distract himself. He looked up, startled. "Isabella." She stepped closer. "I'm sorry." He frowned. "For what?" "For dragging you into this, for being seen." He put down the pot and stood up, his eyes meeting hers. "You have nothing to be sorry for. I chose to be there. I chose to be with you." She looked at him, her eyes filled with a mix of gratitude and pain. "But the headlines, the photos—" "Are not your fault," he interrupted gently. "And I don't care what they say. I care about you. I care about us." She took a deep breath, her voice barely above a whisper. "I care about us, too." He reached out and took her hand, his thumb brushing gently over her brace. "Then we'll face this together." And in that moment, amidst the blooms and the quiet, they made a silent pact to stand together, to heal together, and to let love grow, no matter what the world threw at them. He dropped the trowel and walked straight to her. "You didn't drag me. I was already falling." Her eyes filled with tears. "They're going to twist this. They already have. And you could lose everything." "I already lost everything," he said, motioning between them. "This is the only thing that's felt real since Sophia." She took a breath. "I don't want to be your second chance." "You're not," he said, his voice low and steady. "You're my next chapter. There's a difference." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I don't know how to do this." He cupped her face. "Then we'll figure it out together." But the fallout wasn't over. The foundation board, started in Sophia's name, scheduled an emergency meeting. Isabella didn't want him to go. "You don't owe them anything." "Yes, I do," he said. "I owe them honesty." He showed up with no lawyer, no excuses, just truth. He told them about his grief, his mistakes, his healing, and Isabella, and how the love he'd found wasn't a replacement, but a resurrection. Half the board was moved, the other half was furious. "You're tarnishing Sophia's legacy," one said. Adrian stood slowly. "No, I'm continuing it." She believed in second chances, in compassion, in planting things that would bloom long after she was gone. He looked them all in the eye. "And that's exactly what I'm doing." The next day, a formal vote passed. He kept his role, but barely. The warning was clear. No more scandals, no more surprises, and definitely no more headlines. That night he returned to Isabella's door, tired but calm. She let him in. No questions. They sat in silence, her head on his shoulder, the city pulsing quietly around them. "I want to protect this," she whispered. "So do I. Even if the world doesn't understand, they don't have to." She looked at him. I'm not Sophia. He touched her hand. I know, and I don't want you to be. She paused, then asked, her voice almost trembling, Then who am I to you? He looked straight into her soul. You're the angel that stayed when I was ready to disappear. And in that quiet, nothing needed fixing, only feeling. And for the first time, neither of them pulled away. But far away, another piece of Adrian's past stirred. Someone had been watching, waiting, and now that he was learning to love again, they planned to take it all. The letter arrived in a plain envelope, hand-delivered, no return address, no name, just a single page. You think love makes you untouchable, but grief has consequences. You can't erase the past, not even with new flowers. At the bottom, a single line of Sophia's handwriting, copied from a personal journal Adrian hadn't opened in years. His blood ran cold. Someone had broken into the past he kept locked away. That night, Adrian didn't tell Isabella, not yet. She was asleep on the couch in his penthouse, a blanket tucked around her, the city's lights dancing softly through the windows. She looked so peaceful, so safe, and the idea of putting fear into her again made his hands shake. But he kept the letter, burned the envelope, and told himself it was just a ghost, someone looking to profit from old pain. Except ghosts don't usually know how to hurt you. Not like this. The next morning, Isabella woke early, made tea, and walked into the garden on the rooftop terrace. Adrian joined her, a little too quiet. Did something happen? She asked, reading him like always. No, he lied, just didn't sleep well. She nodded, didn't push. But something in her chest tightened. Later that day, she stopped by the retreat to check on the dahlias. She still hadn't decided what to do with them, keep the garden there or move the blooms to the rooftop. She sat by the arbor bench, eyes closed, listening to the wind. That's when she noticed it, a shadow behind the trees, a camera lens, and then nothing. She turned fast, too fast. Pain shot up her healing wrist. By the time she stood, the figure was gone. She called Adrian immediately. I think someone's following me. His voice dropped to ice. Where are you? She told him. He was there in 20 minutes. Armed security was posted within the hour, but the fear had already taken root. That night, Adrian finally told her about the letter, the words, the handwriting, the threat. Isabella listened, quiet, her tea growing cold in her hands. Then she said, Do you think this has something to do with Sophia? Adrian nodded slowly. She kept journals, private ones. Isabella took a deep breath. Then we need to find out who's doing this, together. And in that moment, amidst the fear and the uncertainty, they found a new strength, a resolve to protect what they had, no matter what shadows lurked in the past. I never read them. They disappeared after she died. Isabella was still. You think someone took them? I don't know, Adrian said, reaching across the table to take her hand, but I'm not losing you, Isabella. I don't care who's watching. I don't care what they know. Tears welled in her eyes. I'm not leaving, she said, but you can't keep secrets from me, not anymore. I won't, he promised, and this time he meant it. They went to the police, filed a report, hired private investigators, and life somehow went on, but slower, more careful, more aware. And under the surface, fear simmered, not fear of scandal, but fear of loss. Because now that they had found each other, the idea of being ripped apart was too much to bear. 1 week later, a breakthrough. The journals turned up, sold anonymously, to a rare books dealer who recognized Sophia's name and flagged the entry. The seller had used a fake name, but the surveillance footage showed everything. It was a woman, mid-30s, blonde, familiar. Adrian froze when he saw the face. Her name is Vanessa Quinn, he said. Isabella looked up. Who is she? He exhaled hard. She used to work for me, my executive assistant. She was fired 6 months before Sophia died. Why? She became obsessed, not with me, with Sophia. She thought Sophia didn't deserve the life she had. Isabella swallowed. And now she's trying to take it back. That night, Isabella couldn't sleep. She sat on the balcony, a blanket around her, the city humming quietly below. Adrian joined her, held her close. They didn't speak about Vanessa or fear. They spoke about futures, about what their love could look like a year from now, 5, 10. "I want a garden," Isabella said, "big enough for kids to play in, for joy to be louder than grief." Adrian nodded. "I want a house full of windows, no shadows, and peace, and you." She turned, tears in her eyes. "You already have me." But peace wouldn't come so easily, because just as they began to dream again, the final blow came, a news leak. Someone had released pages from Sophia's journal to the press, doctored, manipulated, twisted. Headline screamed, "Sophia Blackwood feared husband before her death. Inside a marriage built on control, was Sophia trying to leave?" The world snapped its jaws again. Adrian stared at the screen, numb. Isabella sat beside him, hands trembling. He whispered, "They're trying to turn her into a weapon." Isabella, strong and steady, stood. "Then we'll fight back, together, always." But neither of them knew what the next 24 hours would bring, because Vanessa wasn't done, and love was about to be tested one final time. The world turned vicious overnight. Isabella couldn't walk through the city without cameras chasing her. Rumors painted Adrian as a manipulator, Isabella as a gold digger, and Sophia as a silent victim. The story, though false, was gripping, too tempting for the media to resist. But Adrian didn't hide, not this time. And he didn't let Isabella hide either. He called a press conference, not a statement, not a lawyer, just him and Isabella, side by side, holding hands. He stepped up to the podium, calm and clear. "My wife, Sophia, was a light in my life. I mourned her. I still do. But mourning doesn't mean I stop living. It doesn't mean I give up the right to love again. Isabella has been a beacon of hope and healing for me. She has shown me that it's possible to find joy after loss, to build something beautiful from the ashes. The accusations against me are false, manipulated by someone who seeks to destroy what we have." Sophia believed in love, in second chances, in the power of forgiveness. She would not want her memory to be used as a weapon against the very things she stood for. "We will not be silenced by lies. We will not be broken by fear. We stand here today united to face whatever comes our way, because love, true love, is stronger than any storm. Thank you." The room was silent for a moment, then erupted in a flurry of questions. Adrian and Isabella stood firm, answering each one with honesty and grace. And as they walked away from the podium, hand in hand, they knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. He paused. The room was silent. "I did not control her. I didn't silence her. And the words now being spread are lies, twisted from the truth of who she was and what we shared." He turned to Isabella. "This woman beside me did not steal anything. She gave me back something I thought I'd never feel again, hope. And I refuse to let hate rewrite a story that belongs to healing." The truth rippled across the country. More articles came, this time with facts. The private investigators released full footage of Vanessa Quinn selling Sophia's journals under a fake name. Emails surfaced, obsessive ones, threatening ones. It all led to her. She was arrested 2 days later, charged with theft, defamation, and harassment. Isabella and Adrian didn't celebrate. They exhaled. For the first time in months, it felt like the storm was finally passing. 1 week later, Adrian returned to the arbor at Villa Serena. The dahlias were blooming again. Isabella sat beside him, fingers intertwined with his. "You look lighter," she said. He smiled. "I feel like me again." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "And who is that?" He kissed the top of her head. "Someone who's finally ready to stop surviving and start living." She closed her eyes, her heart full. They sat in silence, the kind of silence that feels like music. Then he pulled something from his jacket pocket, a ring, simple, elegant, timeless. "Isabella Martinez," he said, "you walked into my life when I didn't believe in second chances. And you taught me that angels don't always come with wings. Sometimes they come with dirt under their fingernails and kindness in their voice." She laughed through tears. "Will you be mine?" he asked. She nodded once, then again, harder. "Yes." They married in the garden that summer. No cameras, no headlines, just love, pure, honest, earned. Isabella wore a dress with pockets. One of them held a tiny sprig of lavender from the first day they met. Adrian wore his wedding band on a chain beside Sophia's ring, not to replace her, but to carry her forward. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And in every glance, every laugh, every hand held at dusk, they built something stronger than fear. They built something sacred. Years later, in a new home filled with sunlight and windows, two little girls ran barefoot through the backyard. They were named Grace and Sophia. Isabella sat on the porch, soil on her jeans, pruning a pot of dahlias. Adrian joined her with coffee, kissed her cheek. "Still the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," he said. She smirked. "The flowers?" "You," he grinned. They watched the girls laugh, the sun rising behind them. And in that moment they knew. Grief doesn't end, but love doesn't either. And when you let both live together side by side, something extraordinary can bloom. Thank you for joining us on this journey of love, resilience, and redemption. If you enjoyed The Billionaire's Garden of Healing, please let us know in the comments below. Your feedback means the world to us. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Time Lens Stories for more heartwarming stories that celebrate the power of love and the strength of the human spirit. Until next time, keep believing in second chances and the magic of new beginnings.